Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Great, great. Love to hear that like that. And we turn that off. It's great to be here. I'm trying to get my camera up on the other stream, so if you can hear me, just hang on a second. There we go. And I'm doing a couple of different things tonight, so bear with me as we kind of go live. I just had planned on a live, but not to this particular topic. And it's really sad tonight. We think about Ace Frehley. Oops, sorry. And we think about losing of our legends, that grew up with. And I'm old enough to remember I didn't get to go to a lot of the early shows, but I did see Kiss, and I have seen Ace Frehley, and it's sad that he has passed away. 74 years old. He showed up as a kid with two. He had two different color sneakers on. He kicked his guitar and his amp into the room, plugged in, and started playing, and kind of ticked off Gene and Paul. And then they got onto him when he got up there to play. They said, "We found our guy." Everybody else was done. And what a great, what great legendary status. Now, again, they had up and downs and ins and outs and everything across their and good evening to everybody. They were up and down and in and out with they argued. They didn't get along sometimes, but and nothing against Bruce Kulick or any other guitarist that ever played with Kiss, but Ace Frehley was the legend. Ace Frehley was the guy, and he just laid it out. I mean, there was he had his faults, like we all have faults, but there was nobody could really fit that band like he did, especially for the early work. I want to tell a couple of stories tonight about Kiss and one particular one about Ace Frehley. It's a funny memory that I have tonight. I was thinking about it and some of you may not be old enough to remember, really. And I mean, he's been on tour. He continued to tour, and so did Kiss. They never really retire, right? Until they're really retired, until they go on to the next life. But the 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 Ace Frehley was he was funny. He had a funny way about him. He really did. He was kind of an odd guy in some ways, but he just laid it down. I mean, those solos and stuff, and just the way he played guitar. He was really. I mean, they were all from New York, but he was the New York tough guy. He was that guy. He was tough, and he was he was a guy that really was street tough. I mean, as much as they tried to make Gene out the tough guy, and he was a big guy, and he had that tough look, the demon look, and all that. Ace Frehley was the New York kid. I mean, Peter Criss to an extent, I guess, too, but Ace Frehley was the New York tough guy. I mean, he talked like that kind of guy. I mean, he was just who he was, and he didn't care whether you liked that or not. I mean, he didn't care whether you were, okay with him being who he was or not. He just was who he was. Of course, he went on to have a long solo career. He really kind of started early on when they did their albums, individual albums, and his did better than the rest of them. I guess you could kind of say he kicked off his solo career then. But Ace Frehley had fallen recently and had developed a brain bleed, and it just didn't go good. And it's not good to fall. It's never good to fall, especially when you're older. And it's just tough, and there is a time for all of us to pass on, and it's never fun to see that. I didn't know him personally or anything like that, but I have read a lot of stories about him, and I did see him in concert, at a small club, which is great because you really get up close. I never saw Kiss together, the originals. A lot of you have, maybe you're listening in. If you're old enough, you say, "Well, I did that." Great. I hope you saw them at Madison Square Garden and in all their glory, or whatever you want to say. But I have seen them both. And I'm sorry, I got two different cameras working here. So if you see me looking around, I'm running two different streams. But I just wanted to get on, and I was already scheduled to go with one, so I wanted to add in the other because I really wanted to jump on this story. This is part of a new show, really, the Southern Fried Soundstage, and we're we're kicking it off hopefully over the weekend with we're going to be talking about the rock group Tesla from Sacramento, California. But this news jumped all over the screen today, and I knew he had pulled out of some shows, but like everybody expected him to get back out there. He was still playing really well at 74. He still had that way about him, and he was still had a really good solo career. But it's never it's one of those things. I'm glad that they got back together. I'm glad that they got back together and made peace enough to do that. And there was talk that they were talking about doing something again. But I'm glad that they did that. There was times where they did not get along. There were times that Gene and Paul especially did not get along with Ace. And Ace recently, within the last few years, had went on some talk shows, and they had some words back and forth, and he talked about he was going to release some information that would be embarrassing, and some people talked him out of that and said, you might not should go there, just leave that alone, and it's good that he did that, because some things are just better left unsaid. You don't have to take all the skeletons and expose them, and probably all rock artists have things that are embarrassing to them and they don't want released. And so I'm glad he didn't do that. It just wasn't, even though they were rough on him. I'm glad he didn't do that. And he was just an interesting character. But I saw Ace Frehley in Atlanta, GA. Oh my goodness, it's been easily 25 or 30 years ago. I'll say about 25 years ago. And I saw him in a little club. It was, I don't remember the name of it. It was a little club there on Peachtree Road. There's all kind of Peachtree streets in Atlanta. But there was a club there, and I think it was a 24-hour club, but they would have music in there. And we heard that Ace was going to be playing with his band at this club in Atlanta. So I don't live in Atlanta, but I live in Georgia. But it's about a 2-hour drive to where this club would be. And I went down and saw Ace, and we got there early, and I got right in front. Me and a buddy of mine, we got right in front, and I was really right in front of Ace Frehley. There was one person in front of me, and there was me. And that's neither here nor there. I just wanted to give you an idea of where I was standing while Ace was just ripping and shredding and all this stuff. And good evening, everyone that's popping in. But he was in the middle of a solo, like it was loud. Like I think up until that point, because this is a small club, I had been in some loud concerts leading up to this, and I don't remember who was the loudest. But I had been in some loud concerts, but this was extremely loud. It was a small club. Amps are cranked up to max, and I don't remember what song they were playing. And we're standing there, and they're jamming. He's just ripping it, shredding as Ace could. And some guy in the crowd, he got so excited, just overjoyed. He probably had been drinking, I don't know. And he just couldn't help himself. He jumped on stage. And I really believe that he was a big old boy too, but I really believe his intention was just to give Ace a bear hug. Like he was just going to give him a bear hug. And by the way, folks, don't jump on stage unless you're asked. And so this guy jumps on stage. He was to my right. The guy that jumped on the stage, he was to my right. So he kind of come from my right, and it sort of, I didn't know who, because I think there was 4 members of the band, 3 or 4 members. I'm trying to remember. So anyway, I see this figure coming from the right. He's jumped on stage, and here's Ace. He's really right in front of me, and here comes this figure. And so I see this, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what is this guy going to do? And at that moment, there was a roadie that come out of the back. And Ace never saw him coming because this guy was coming up behind him. Ace had turned, and he's deep in the solo right in front of me, but he's facing away from this guy. And here comes this big old guy. I think he was drunk. And here comes a roadie out of the back. He looked like a member of the Hells Angels. I got to be honest. That's nothing, not put down the guy, but that's what he looked like to me. Like, he looked like a guy who could ride with a biker gang and a rough one. He come out of the back, I never, he happens so fast because that's our job to look after people like that. And so he goes into like a Superman dive at this guy. I don't know how. I mean, he did it so fast. He was a big guy. They'll talk about the roadie or security or whatever he was. Small. I'm sure he served as both roadie, security, whatever they needed. This guy comes out. He's diving at Ace Frehley. Ace is deep in the solo. He hits this guy so hard he face plants him. And this is about the time that Ace figures out something's going on because he saw the crowd responding to this, and he face planted this guy right behind Ace Frehley. This guy almost got to him, but he hits this guy. When he hit him so hard, his head bounced off the stage and it knocked him out. And the guy just grabs the guy by the legs, just like bear hugs the legs, and he's just pulling him off the stage. The guy's just being dragged across the stage floor. And while this is going on, Ace Frehley is playing the solo. He never missed a note, but he's looking around and he's just shaking his head like, what in the heck is going on? You can see the look on his face like, what happened? So he turns around. He never misses a lick. He's playing the solo. They drag this guy off the stage to the back. And Ace finishes the solo. They finish the song. And the crowd is just like what just happened? It really happened so fast that some people probably didn't even see what happened until the guy was dragging him off the stage. The only reason I saw it because we're standing up. You're not sitting down. You're standing up. It's like the mosh pit area, And if you're trying to see, you look around people. I'm pretty tall, so I was able to look pretty good and see the action that was going on. But I was right in front, so I saw this guy. People in the back probably didn't even know what happened. When the guy was on the ground, they wouldn't even be able to see him because it was just one level. There's no upper level. It's a small club, and this guy's laying on the ground, knocked out, and they don't even know. Probably can't even see what the guy's dragging off the stage. Ace Frehley finishes the song. He walks up to the microphone, and he just shakes his head. He says, let me tell everybody something. He was real calm. I'll never forget. He said, let me explain something to you. And he said, first of all, I really hope that guy is okay. I mean, he was just down to earth. He didn't start cussing and he didn't get mad at the crowd. He did. I mean, I could imagine some other members of the rock group Kiss, nothing against them. I can imagine them getting really mad. But Ace was so cool through all this. And he says, listen, guys, I really hope that this guy's okay. He said, but I never know what their intentions are, so I pay these guys good money to take care of me. And he said, if he was going to hurt me, that's what I pay these guys for. And he said, I pay them to do a job, and they do it well. He said, so I'm telling all of you down front, which I was one of them, And he said, I'm telling you right now, don't even think about jumping on the stage. If that right there didn't tell you that that's a bad idea, I don't know how to tell you anymore. And he said, I truly don't want anybody getting hurt. And he said it again, and I hope this guy's okay. I can tell you that you could almost feel the people back up a half step from the stage because what they saw. This guy hit him. I've seen some people get Superman like that at other concerts. Even I saw him at a Bon Jovi, I know. I was at a Bon Jovi concert in Chattanooga, and I saw a girl get laid out like that the same way, but they didn't hit her as hard as they hit this guy. This guy, wow. I'll never forget that as long as I live. And it was a great show. I mean, it was the only time that I saw Ace Frehley in concert. He played Rock Soldiers and all the songs. Of course he played Cold Gin. Those are, those songs that he had a part in writing and stuff. So he played a mixture of Kiss songs and the Ace Frehley solo group, and his songs there. And this was around, I want to say this was around 1990. This is before, because they got back together, remember, in the 90s. I want to say this was probably around, and I am guessing, but I'm going to say around 91, 92, 3, somewhere in there. I didn't look it up today to remember, but I tell you that memory has stood out to me, and it was sad to hear the news. We were just fixing to go live with our other show. I mentioned it in our other show while I was on with my co-host, And I thought I got to go online. I was sitting here thinking of Ace, and throughout all the years, the Alive albums, 1 and 2, just those iconic solos that he had, and the solo song, Newark Groove. And I'm not I was, in the Kiss Army. I did get to see Kiss in a one of their what do you call it? Not a together, not all together. I've saw them a couple times, but Ace was not in there at the time, and that's one of those you wish you had done. I don't have that, and so Ace was not there. This was Bruce Kulick time, and I got to see him in a convention was the word I was looking for, also in Atlanta, and got to meet them up kind of close and personal. And I wish Ace had been there at the time. And again, I like Bruce Kulick. I think he did a fine job in Kiss. He's always held up the legacy of Kiss really well. And I just I like a lot of Kiss songs. Some people don't like them, and I get that. There are a lot of Kiss was a mixture of theater, rock and roll. A lot of different things come out into that. Their costumes, all the getting made up. And I'll tell you a Kiss memory in a minute because you can't say one without the other. I mean, Ace Frehley was Kiss as much as Paul or Gene or Peter Chris. Ace Frehley was Kiss, and again, yeah, I will say it. Paul Stanley held that band together while Peter left, Ace left, Gene was off, playing Hollywood. Nothing against him. He was just rolling the dice that he had. And Paul, he likes to brag on himself. And he, in his book, I don't know if you've ever read Paul Stanley's book. I've read it and heard the audio version. He likes to brag on himself a little bit. He's got that kind of ego. But I like Paul. And I don't know him personally, but I like him. I like his. They had a lot of iconic songs. And do I like every song they ever did? I wouldn't say that. I would say that I just liked the group, and I think that they did a really good job of merchandising themselves. There's no doubt that they did a great job with that because they sold everything. When I was in high school, that's when it really hit for me because I was in high school. Well, I got in high school in 1980. So starting in middle school, or junior high, we called it then, you started seeing the Kiss lunch boxes and T-shirts and all that stuff. And my parents would have never let me go see something like that. But you saw it, and all the guys were talking, and how many guitarists did Ace Frehley influence? Now, nothing against Eddie Van Halen because he influenced, millions. But Ace Frehley deserves credit too, because before there was Eddie Van Halen, there was Ace Frehley, among others. But Ace Frehley, due to his, there was a lot of things about him and the stage presence, and not how fast he could make, or how many different sounds he would get. But he has his place as well, and surely influenced Eddie Van Halen in ways, absolutely. And he just had a way about him of playing on stage, and sometimes he did have that drinking problem, and sometimes he was probably trying to stay on his feet. And you got to give all of them credit for playing in platform boots and all that stuff. But they they left a legacy, and they're still out there getting it. I mean, they really are. When when you think about uh, the band, I mean, they're still they're still doing things. In other words, and I just think that uh, it's truly amazing that they're still going. I mean, a lot of your iconic '70s groups are still out there and still getting it, but we're getting very close to the end for many of them. And you look at Rush; they're going, back on tour for their 50 something tour. You still got the Who is trying to wrap up, and the Stones and Leopard, and all these groups started in the '70s and some of the '60s, and there are many others. But it's getting to that time where we're going to start losing more and more of those iconic names and stuff. But you got to give them credit for being out there and continuing to make music, and at a fairly high level. I mean, guitarists just get more seasoned, but singers, they have to struggle with the voice and everything. But it is a sad day, And I could just imagine for guitarists that were influenced by, uh, were absolutely influenced by Ace Frehley, it's got to be truly a very hard day as they think about learning all those songs and uh, you know uh, being influenced by those early albums, which were really the classic. Later on, by the time you got to the '80s, Kiss was really struggling. I mean, The Elder came out, and that even though a lot of people like The Elder as a cult kind of thing, it was not a good um, it was not a good thing for Kiss overall. And so a lot of people left Kiss, and it was a struggle. You got in the '80s, and they didn't have as good work. I mean, they had some weak albums, and you might say that Ace got out the right time, and of course they went without the makeup. And when by the time Ace came back, they were going back in the makeup to get the original back together, and so he missed a lot, some of that '80s almost popish music that not that Kiss was ever really heavy, but a lot heavier in the '70s than they were in the '80s until the album that came out was really heavy in the '90s. Uh, but yeah, it's sad day. Great, and I was thinking, I don't know if you've ever read Sebastian Bach's book, but Sebastian Bach uh, is a huge Kiss fan, and I think about him from Sebastian Bach from oh my goodness, I just went blank on the name, and I know it, but it'll hit me in a minute. Somebody pop it in the chat. I just went blank. But anyway, when I read his autobiography, and I knew a little bit about it, quite a bit. I mean, I grew up during that time, but in his book, he really talks about the the love he had for Kiss and all these great artists, and he tells a story about his dad taking him to the taking him to see Kiss and putting him on his shoulders and stuff, and that influence of that show truly uh, it never left him, and he to this day Sebastian Bach will go into record stores and look for Kiss memorabilia, albums, whatever, and he buys stuff. I mean, he probably has as big a collection as anybody, but outside of Kiss. And I imagine Sebastian Bach tonight is turning one up, if you know what I mean, in honor of the great Ace Frehley. And I imagine it's a very hard night for him. Um, and a lot of people, a lot of people, when you look at and you ask, you read their stories, you read their when they say, well, who influenced you when you grew up? And almost every artist, no matter what music they went into, they could be country if they're of that age. They will say that Kiss had a huge impact on them. They brought the stage show, they brought the flash bombs and all that stuff. I mean, it was just something different, and it really just set rock and roll on fire in a lot of ways. Nothing against the Led Zeppelins or anybody else, but honestly, when you got later in the '70s, Led Zeppelin was they had their own issues, and some they kind of were trailing off. And here's Kiss. I mean, you think of Legend '77 Destroyer tour and the '78. I mean, from that '75 to '78, '9, right in there, they were the kings of the universe. And then they had their time where the early '80s or '80, and it didn't go good for them for a little bit, but they hung around. You put out some duds, and they hung around. They did a good job of hanging on and keeping the business going, and it is a business. And Ace Frehley again had a nice career, and then he got the chance to come back. And for those that didn't get to see them, the fact that went back in the makeup and Ace was back and Peter. And the only bad part about this is if you read Bruce Kulick's uh, story about this, he was in the studio with Kiss making another album. I want to think that was Psycho Circus or something. I think I could be wrong on that. If I'm wrong, correct me. I'm going by memory. But Bruce Kulick said he knew something was up. A lot of phone calls, a lot of closed door meetings, and of course, once the album, he didn't think it got a fair shake because once they got through in the studio, they'd made the announcement that they were getting the band back together, as you say, and of course a lot of money. Now of late, he said he wasn't going. There were times he turned down offers to play with them because he said the money wasn't there. He felt like he was disrespected, and he didn't like the fact that they did that. And but here of late there was a warming on that, and I think they were going to do something, but it's forever gone now. The guitar is laid down, and he is absolutely Hall of Fame. And I remember, I do remember out of Sebastian Bach's book though, he did share a story that he was writing. He was trying to write some music with Ace Frehley. I mean, he's a big Kiss fan, so they were buddies. And Sebastian Bach had this song he was working on, and they were anyway. He was at Ace's house, and they were working together in his studio, I think, and they were working on this song together. Well, lo and behold, about a few months later, whatever, Ace puts this song out. And he just lifted it. He just made it his, and he couldn't be mad at him. Although he was like, "Really, dude, we were supposed to do that together." But it was a good song, and Ace was like, that happens sometimes. You got to watch your stuff. So he found out that the friendship only went so far that Ace was thinking, that's a good song. I'll make it for my own. And he wasn't going to. He said, of course, I wasn't going to do anything to him. He said, I have to chuckle. But those are the kinds of things that can make people really mad when you think about music and rights and the songs and stuff like that. So if you're younger, and I'm on TikTok tonight too, if you're younger or if you're in any of the streams I'm in and you don't remember Kiss, or you don't, well, who is this guy talking about? Who is this Ace Frehley dude? Uh, Go back and look at it and be blessed as far as blessing as loving just the way a guy was one with the guitar. And when he was on stage, it was like he was in his own little world, and he did influence, and he was just a cool dude, tough dude. He's the kind of guy that, like I said, he's New York tough. I mean, as much as Paul and Gene wanted to act tough, they were school teachers, I think, or whatever. True street kid was Ace, and they might mouth at him, but I'll guarantee you, they didn't want to fight him because he's that New York tough. That New York groove, that's right. New York tough. He's the kind of guy that ain't gonna take nothing, and he'd give back as good as he got. But I will say for Gene and Paul and Peter and other people that are connected, they would be sad to not. At the end of the day, no matter what problems that you have had with people in your life, whether it's a working relationship, your family, whatever it is, when it gets to the end of days, those rough spots, those rough patches where you were arguing and you were not getting along, they're not remembered. That's not what is truly remembered. Mostly, you remember the good times. And I would say tonight that Gene and Paul are thinking about the day that young kid pushed that guitar, that amp in and brought his guitar and ticked them off, and then the amazement they had when he started playing and said, "That's it, that's the guy. He's got the sound," and all the work that they did. Going forward for those first few albums. Now, in saying that, there's always these Kiss legends, and I'm not a Kiss expert, although I have followed them a lot and I've read a lot. There are people that could school me on my knowledge, so I've got something slightly off, but I'm hitting the hot spots, and certainly not hitting even most of it, just a little bit, just a little sliver of it. But there are those Kiss rumors that they really did happen. How much we don't know. That other guitarists were brought in at times because either because of stimulants, alcohol, just not able to go. And the studio was not. Ace Frehley was a stage guy, but and Kiss had a lot of those kind of things. the stage guy. Some people, some great ones, they don't really like the studio anyway. I imagine that was Ace Frehley. So Bob Kulick, was one. There are others, but Bob Kulick was one. Bruce's brother, who has since passed on as well, I believe. It is said that he cut a lot of solos and helped them out in the studio along the way to keep these albums rolling because either someone just couldn't get the solo they were looking for or were just incapacitated due to problems in their life. There's a lot of talk about who wrote what. That maybe Ace got some credit for solos on albums that maybe he didn't do. I don't know. That's Kiss lore. I wasn't there, but I know what I heard on stage. Now, it is funny. It is funny that and I read this, I heard this, that because, he'd been out of Kiss a long time when they brought the band back together and put the makeup on and hit the road. I have read that Bruce Kulick, I believe it was Bruce Kulick, maybe Bob helped as well, they had to help Ace relearn solos because it was songs that he hadn't played in a long time. He actually forgot them. And it's kind of like if you don't use it, you lose it. And that's what they say. And nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you haven't done something in a long time, you haven't been, playing that music. I mean, he played on his solo tour. He played, a lot of his own stuff, and he hit the high points of Kiss during those shows. But to do a full Kiss show, which would be a lot of songs, there would be songs he'd have to relearn. He just didn't remember them. He didn't remember some of the solos. So actually, Bruce helped out with it. It's the kind of guy he is, and Bob, and who knows who else, to get him kind of ready for the tour and go out and perform. But I'm telling you, I've heard him recently. I forget how far back, and he still had the chops. He still had the go. But I just imagine all of those that are still living, all the guitarists, the ones you've never even heard of, the ones that never made it, that were in the band, the ones that they were the guitar players, they were the kids that had the Kiss lunchboxes, the T-shirts and everything. And Ace Frehley was their favorite character in Kiss. I imagine those guys and gals. I imagine that tonight's pretty hard for them as they think about it. And how many are probably getting out their Kiss albums tonight and looking at some of the old Kiss covers and probably put the old albums on. Yes, they still have those albums. We still play them. And put the Kiss album on and went down memory lane on some of those early iconic days of the Kiss, the heyday of Kiss. And I imagine you will be hearing a lot about this as we go forward. And I imagine sales will escalate. It usually happens when someone passes along that's very iconic. And yes, Craig, I imagine sales will just escalate. And I want to hear, and I don't know if they've already done it, if Gene or Paul or Peter has made a statement or anything, but I look forward to it. And hopefully, they'll maybe do a reissue of some stuff in Blu-ray or whatever, and some interviews and stuff. Because Ace interviewed a lot. He liked to talk. And, I was trying to think of, God, I cannot think tonight. Like, it's really just got my mind all messed up. And I'm trying to think of the music talk show. God, I can see the guy's face. And he had done a lot of interviews with him in the last few years. And I'm glad I got to listen to those. Of course, those are stored online and you can go back and listen to them. Not look at them, but listen to them. And he was a funny guy. He said funny things. And he was Mr. Cool. He really, really was. And if you read Paul's book, that's filled with some really odd stuff that went on. That's rock and roll. Really odd, crazy stuff that went on. He had a strange sense of humor. We'll just say that. Stuff I better not repeat that I remember. But that image right now, and if you look into that picture that's right there beside me on screen, at least on the Rumble. I'm sorry, TikTok, you don't have that. But that's an iconic look right there. And I love that. And he didn't need all the fancy stuff. I just say that. just put a guitar in his hands and crank it up as a max, and he would make the sounds come out the way he wanted. He didn't need gimmicks. He didn't, and that's not against anybody. Ace didn't need gimmicks or tricks. He just went out there and played rock and roll. And he always thought it was funny that his solo album sold more than the other guys because of that one song. And he talked about that. I've heard him talk about it. It really got under their skin because Paul and Gene, they definitely have egos, big egos. And but I would say they will be very very speak very highly of him. It's not the time to talk about all the arguments, the tough things that were said, and there were a lot of tough things that were said, even of late. Uh, it had warmed, from what I understand, but a few weeks ago or months ago, it was ugly. But that's the way they did. That's at New York, That's yeah, they don't carry that stuff. You don't get your feelings hurt. You just respond. That's. They're not wearing their feelings on their sleeves. That's just the way it is. That's New York tough. He's that kind of guy. He's like, uh, I wouldn't even repeat what he would say because he'd just tell you like it is. But he was a legend. Always be a legend. And I'm definitely going to have to go back and listen to the Alive albums. Just in the next tomorrow and in the next day, and just go through that catalog again. And oh, by the way, I was talking about Ace not remembering some of his stuff. When I saw Kiss at the convention in Atlanta, and I don't remember what year that was, with Bruce Kulick, it was during that time frame. They were on stage with their acoustic guitars, and it was kind of a play a little music, talk to the crowd kind of thing. And I remember somebody asked, and I got to give him credit. I got to give him a lot of credit. Somebody asked Gene, who it was a song that I don't remember what it was, but it was a song that Gene had sung. It was one of the more obscure songs. They asked him if he would play it. And he said, I have not played that song since we recorded it. But he said, here you go. I'll do the best I can. And he played about a verse and a half or whatever, stanza and a half or whatever. And then he said, that's it. That's all I got. But he did try it for the fans. And I give him that. They have always pleased the fans. And if anybody understood that aspect of it, the stage part, the interaction between the audience and the group, Gene and Paul definitely understood that. It was all about presentation, absolutely, and they milked that for all it was worth. And you know what? Highly successful. Some would say they were, marketed out, but they always found a way to reinvent themselves, and they're still doing that. They're absolutely still doing that. I think that what ticked a lot of people off, and it's been out there, it's been simmering. Is when after the Kiss reunion with Peter and Ace, they did it again, but this time obviously it was with a different drummer and a different guitar player, and well, even going all the way back, the original Carr, when he was there, of course, sadly passed away with cancer. But there were people, your Kiss Army, they were not happy that they put that makeup on another person, and that's always been there. You leave that was like you just leave it alone, and they were mad at Gene and Paul for doing that. But again, for them, it's all about marketability, marketing, and putting that stuff out there, and they were not going to miss that opportunity to continue going down the road with that. That's not for me to say, and I'm not their judge or anything, but fans did get mad about it. But my memories, and going, and by the way, I wanted to say that when I saw Kiss, I saw them at the convention. I actually never saw them on the big stage. I was really blessed to see them in a small club in Atlanta. And I remember this is back in the days, really before internet was really out there, and you didn't buy your tickets online, or at least I wasn't. And I saw a headline in USA Today newspaper that said Kiss is going to be at this. I didn't even know the club was going to be at this club in Atlanta. And I said, this can't be true. And I went by, and a friend of mine, who loved, he's a guitar player and he loved Kiss. And he was at work and I said, hey, I don't, this may be a joke, but I'm going to go down to Atlanta and go to the old Ticketmaster. I could, there's a place I could have stopped earlier, but I wanted to go on down and shop at Tower Records. Anyway, I went on down and I knew a guy down there because I was in there all the time. Whenever I went to Atlanta all the time, and I went in there and I asked him. I said, "Is this a joke?" And he said, "No, no, no. It's a real. It is Kiss. They're doing a surprise club tour for their fans. They did not advertise for this. They said that they said our fans will find us, and it was for the fans that would follow them and know. And then they said they were going to do the big tour behind it. So I got to see Kiss. This would be with Bruce Kulick in about a place that held 500 people. Imagine that, 250 in the seats, the rest on the floor. I was on the floor, about in the middle. I was right in front of Paul Stanley. Once again, right in the middle, like I was with Ace when I saw him at the club in Atlanta. But that club wasn't this big. I saw them there, and then I saw the rest of the guys, and and I told you how loud it was when Ace Frehley was playing at the club. I mean, it was loud. But let me tell you this real quick, and I'm going to be on a few more minutes. When I saw them at this club, and I think that's the Midtown. God, it's been a while. Anyway, if you've ever been there, uh, great little place. By the way, there was a guy out in front of the. We were walking in. There was a guy out in front that had the. He looked exactly like Gene Simmons' Destroyer tour. Exactly. And there were people that rode up down the road that thought they saw Gene Simmons in makeup. No, they weren't in makeup this night. He was, and I remember in the show, this guy, he's spreading out the wings and everything, and he's sticking his tongue out. This guy made all his own stuff. We talked to him. He made everything up to look exactly like that time frame, and he was the same height, the look. He looked like a clone with the makeup on. And during the show, he's standing up on his seats and he's getting Gene's attention. I just happened to look and I saw Gene. Gene's playing the bass and sing, and he looks up and he gives him the thumbs up, like "Good job, dude." But anyway, when we come out of that club, and I want to say, I really believe they played. It was long. It was 2 or 3 hours. It was a long show. They really just ripped it. They didn't do a lot of talking. They just stopped for a minute and keep going. It was a lot of songs. No opening act. It was just them. Got to hear so much music. But anyway, we walked out and we went to we were staying all night in Atlanta because we were going to a record collectible convention at the World Congress Center the next morning. So we were staying in Atlanta. We went to a Subway just to get something to grab on the way to the hotel. We'd already had our hotel. And when we started talking to the guy at the Subway, he backed up. We're like, what's going on here? We didn't realize it, but we were screaming at the guy. None of us could hear. It was that loud. We didn't wear hearing protection. Nobody did that. That was uncool. So we got up the next morning, and my ears are ringing bad. Like that night, they were just dead. Like what? I can't hear. The next morning, it was just the ringing, high pitch. So we went to the record show, spent a good time there, too much money and all that stuff. And then we came home. 3.5 days, 3.5 days after that show. I was getting to the point I was ready to go see a audiologist. 3.5 days, excuse me, 3.5 days after that show, it lifted. I told my wife on the day that lifted, I said, I think I've damaged my hearing for life. And she said, "Oh my goodness," because I said the ringing is there, and I can't get stopped, and it lifted. There's no doubt I did damage. I'm thankful I got hearing. I can hear pretty well. I'm 60 now, but I want to tell you, I will never forget. That is to me the loudest show that I was ever in because we were in a small place and they cranked it up and it hurt. I was actually looking for something to put in my ears. It was so loud, it hurt my ears. And I'd never been in a show where that happened, ever. I've been in some loud shows. And so when people talk about, we're the loudest band in the world, you have your AC/DC say that, and they're loud. The Who, and they're loud. I never saw AC/DC. I never saw the Who, but I can tell you what: when Kiss was at the club in Atlanta, I can tell you how loud it was there because I know how it did my ears. And those are some memories I have. Um, and I wish I had a lot more. And in the days in our show, this music talk show that I'm doing, we're going to be the Southern Fried Soundstage. We will do a future show on Kiss, and I encourage people to come and tell their stories. We'll get as many of them in as we can. There's thousands upon thousands of. It's your story, their story, and sometimes your stories together. And there'll be other things that I'll think about as the days go by. It was just really shocking. I just was not expecting to see that. I saw the headline first, and it said iconic, Kiss, artist is dead at 74, and I didn't know the name, and I was like, it could be any of them. I mean, they're all iconic and legendary, but something told me it was Ace because I knew he had pulled out of the shows he was going to do and had been under the weather, and I didn't know he fell. I missed that part of it, and he was in a coma and brain bleed, and he passed. And so sometimes you just don't get up. But his fight is over. His struggle with whatever he was feeling in his lifetime, those things are over for him. And but he leaves a lot. He leaves behind a lot of history. I can see, he packed a lot into those 74 years, odd years, whatever it was. He packed a lot of living in there, and he left a lot of interesting quotes and looks and concerts and music and licks and riffs and all those things. I mean, you remember setting the guitars on fire and all that stuff, firing, the things out. I remember all that stuff. And like I said, he got out at the right time. People were mad about it. But if you think about it, he left Kiss at the right time. And it was probably purely over money, if I remember right. But honestly, they went on I mean, I hate to say it. There's a few songs I liked during that era. Tears Are Falling. But the Crazy Crazy Nights tour and all that was, they didn't look tough on stage. I bought one of the cards because they filmed that one, and they played well, but I mean, they almost looked, I gotta say it, a little cartoonish. Paul's outfits were not the best during that time. Gene's hair was, oh my goodness, his hair was horrible. Eric Carr was carrying it on the legacy pretty well, but Bruce Kulick and some of his outfits during that time, go back and look at them. Kiss had become a character of it. So I mean, it was almost like cartoon, and people abandoned them. And except the loyal Kiss Army, they hung in there. But a lot of people, they pulled up. So and then in the '90s, then Kiss comes out with a really good album. It was the last great album. I mean, they had some other albums that had some stuff on it, but they put out one that really kicked butt. And I bought that one, and that was around the time that I saw them, whatever year that was. I can't remember what year it was, but of course, Gene was doing Hollywood, and just there's a lot of things that happened along the way. But and then he come back, they did the makeup, and then he went away again. So I don't know what he had in the bank, but he made a lot of money in his life. Even though I know that Gene and Paul they're the richest ones because they held on to everything. But they all made a pile of money, and I hope he wasn't playing because he had to. Because a lot of artists are out there playing. They love the music, but honestly, a lot of them, if they don't play, they lose everything they got. So they're out there having to get it, 6 nights a week because they're trying to pay for houses and their lifestyle or whatever. But that's just or paying out for medical bills and stuff. A lot of them don't have insurance. Some of the bigger ones do, but a lot of them do not. I remember when Frankie Banelli of Quite Right, and his battle with cancer, they were having to do fundraisers for him for the medical treatments and stuff. And I remember during the times of the thing we don't say because I'm on some platforms here tonight that might, I hate to say it, they strike you for talking about the thing that we went through where people couldn't go to work and school and all that stuff. You know what I mean? Uh, there. That was a weird time. A lot of artists couldn't play at first, and it crippled a lot of them. I mean, a lot of them were about to lose everything they had, and then they found creative ways to go online and play. I saw a concert that Lindsey Buckingham of Fleetwood Mac played during that time from his studio, and you saw a lot of that going on. The only good thing that come out of that time frame is a lot of good music was written. Piles of music was written by a lot of artists. They couldn't do much of anything else, so they recorded riffs, they wrote lyrics, they got together in a computer, they put, and we're still seeing a lot of that come out that people wrote, groups wrote during that time. That's one of the only benefits about that time. But for the artists, they were in survival mode, trying to make it, because most artists, I mean, they're just paycheck to paycheck. They may live a little bit bigger lifestyle than a lot of people, but they're paycheck to paycheck. They can't go without a bunch of paychecks. They'd have to start selling stuff. And I don't know if it was like that for him. I think he was probably okay, but he still liked a fat paycheck, and that's why him and Kiss would argue, or the other members of Kiss, because he would say, "I'm not playing for peanuts, man. I'm Ace Frehley. If you don't like it, tough. I won't come to your party." And he was right. He was right. There was always trying to lowball, him, and of course Peter. I mean, they wrote him off even before that. But and then obviously he couldn't play at one point because of problems he was having physically. It was hard for him to play the drums. It's hard on his drummers, right? Uh, but anyway, tonight, rest in peace, Ace Frehley. And I hope that you'll here at the Southern Fried, send us some of your memories if you have them. Let us know, and we'll put those together for a show here in the next 3 weeks. I've got two shows that I want to do, and I may bump one back and just go ahead and do that. But I want to do kind of go through the career of Kiss and talk about stuff since this has happened. And I was going to go to them, but this just I at least had to come on tonight and talk about the legend that he is in Kiss, and we'll kind of do a walk through memory lane and in a future show. But I do need to do Tesla because that's been sitting out there a little bit, and Tesla will be maybe even this weekend, if I can find time. If not this coming week, the Southern Friday Soundstage will talk about the ongoing career of the boys from Sacramento, California, a group that I really, really like, Tesla. And I would say Frank Cannon, who I just love Frank Cannon. I like Dave and all the guys, but I'm big fan of Frank Cannon out of that band. And I'm going to get some of the quotes that's coming from these guitarists. I haven't had a chance to do that yet. I would be willing to bet that Frank Cannon has some quotes out there of the influence that Ace Frehley had on him. And you're gonna see a lot of that tonight and ongoing in the days ahead. You're gonna see that. And I couldn't think earlier, Sebastian Bach, Skid Row. Why couldn't I think of that? But Sebastian Bach is one that I want to hear what he had. It's not a guitar player, but man, you won't find anybody that loved Kiss any more than Sebastian Bach. And I'd be interested to see what he is having to say, or if he hasn't said it yet, what his quote is. And just what that influence was on their life as an artist or as a person or whatever, and his close and personal friends. People that really spent time with him more. I mean, let's look at Ace was not in Kiss, but one time frame in a long time. So all the Gene and Paul's memories are old, but there's people that toured with Ace. There's people that were close to him that wrote music with him. His own band. They were much closer to him in the last many years than anybody in Kiss. Peter kind of kept in touch with him, I think. But anyway, it'll be interesting to see what those guys. And let's face it, this is the nature of the biz. Those guys are out of a job, and gals. I don't know if you had any ladies in the band, but those people are out of a job, and they're going to have to find employment. Of course, they're already waiting. They're probably hoping, hey, hope he gets better so we can play him. Maybe they already were playing with some folks, but think about the people that tour. They were ready to go on a tour, and Ace couldn't make it, and they were hoping they would get better. Obviously, as a person, yes, but then as a job, I mean, that's part of it. And all those people, the guitar techs, the roadies, the management, the band themselves, all those people are without a job, and so that's what happens. It's a tough pill for everybody to swallow as a human and as a fan, and as that's your employment. That's your boss, and it's just over. And of course, the tribute for him will it should be. You know what? And I'll say it: if they do anything less than Madison Square Garden, shame on them. If you can't pack Madison Square Garden out for Ace Frehley, something's wrong. A New York kid, that was the pinnacle of when they came back together and they played those several nights at Madison Square Garden. That's the love that people have in that city for Kiss, and I guarantee you, you could pack out a tribute to him and certainly bring the bands together and people that have influences in the weeks to come. They're going to be able to put together one heck of an all-star lineup to come out and bring people out to do some of these songs. And the guitarist that will get the honor to play some of those Kiss Ace Frehley solos and rhythm and everything else. Or I know Paul played mainly the rhythm, but the lead and the solos that they'll be able to play. Wow, think of those that be lining up for that, and they. I'm sure that Gene and Paul would want to be on board with that, but if they don't, I guarantee it could happen anyway because that's the power that he has and had, and even though they got a lot of the publicity, there were those people that said that's my guy, that's the guy, and tonight I say I'm sorry. It's always tough to lose someone that you think a lot about. And I remember that because I hated the day that Steve Clark died in Def Leppard. I liked Steve Clark. He was a tortured soul, could not beat the bottle, and it got him. And that was 1991, I believe that was. And of course, in '92, Vivian Campbell joined the band. But in 1991, I was driving down the road, and somebody's going to have this story. And I was in the studio. I'll remember that when I heard that Ace Frehley had passed. I was driving down the road when I heard it on the radio when Steve Clark passed, and I had to pull over. I really was a big fan of Steve Clark, and and these were guitarists that Ace influenced, even if they didn't play exactly like them. The influence was there, and if you listen to a lot of bands, they will tell you about three or four bands that were influences on them. One of those was Kiss. Of course, Van Halen would later on influence many, many people. Led Zeppelin, obviously, but they definitely were influences to those people as they heard them, and many, many others. But AC/DC, Kiss, Led Zeppelin, and then around that same time frame in the late '70s, Van Halen burst on the scene as well. West Coast, East Coast, right? You got the West Coast Van Halen, and you've got the East Coast Ace, out there screaming guitars. So different kind of players. And of course, Gene, he always said, I discovered Van Halen. I don't know about all that, but he did try to help him, and that's truth. Again, egos. He tried to take a little more credit, I think. But for tonight, that's what I got. Southern Fried Soundstage. I'm Dave in the AM, aka the Cornbread Man. That's my nickname. And I appreciate you stopping by. If it was for 1 second or 5 minutes or more, thank you, Craig, for the remarks. We're going to get off of here, and we just want to say have a good night. God bless. Pray for the Frehley family. I don't know. I just don't know as I sit here if he was married or had a girlfriend. I don't remember. But that would be devastating to those people that were gathered when he passed. To the staff that would have been working and trying to, get him back to health. Pray for them tonight. That's not an easy thing. And to the Legion, the Kiss Army, to the true Kiss Army, you people kept Kiss going through hard times. Your loyalty. I don't know of any other fan club that was as loyal and is as loyal as the Kiss Army. There's some great ones out there. But I don't think you can match them. I may be wrong, and I'll be willing to back up if you can tell me. But the Kiss Army has always been loyal. And so tonight, just think about all those people that are tonight thinking about it. And that's what I wanted to come on for, was just to share a couple of stories, kind of talk it out. And, and say my respects to iconic guitarists. Have a good night. God bless. We pray that that you have a good evening, and tomorrow's the weekend, and enjoy your weekend. So um, you know think a good thought. Pray for your fellow man. And here's one last thing I'll say. Don't go. Don't let the sun go down on making things right with somebody. You know what I mean? Don't let disagreements stop you from saying something. I've said this a lot. You know what? We all have arguments. We may not be best buds hanging out anymore. They weren't. They said some horrible things. But I don't know where it was at in the last few days. And I don't know. I hope that there was some opportunity for them to talk. I hope, because that's going to be really hard on Gene and Paul if they did. And I hope that they did. And I just don't know. I really don't know. But for us that's still here, we can say for ourselves, we can still do that if we're living tonight, and we can reach out to somebody, and we can at least send a nice note or something and say, hey, for the good times, if nothing else. Sometimes hurts are hard, but don't go to, don't let those things, uh, don't go to where you get the story, you get that news like tonight, Ace is gone, for your friend or your family or whatever. And hey, even your best friend, sometimes you have arguments. And it's hard to lose a best friend. My best friend was murdered, and I just did a video from the cemetery last Saturday. It took me almost 41 years to make that little video. It may not seem like much to a lot of people, but I'm going to tell you, it was very hard for me to do, and it'll be 40 years next year. And I told my friend that was there, I said, I'm glad you're here. You may just be holding the camera, but it means a lot that you're here, because it hits you hard, and you just never really get over it. Good night. God bless. Cornbread Man, and I'm out. Take care.